So, Ryan, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited to spend some time with you.
Exactly. We always start with the same question, which is maybe not the ordinary, but this is a show about the animal inside of us. And we would love to know if you have a spirit animal or if you have an animal that you identify the most with.
It's funny. I carry a picture of a lion in my office, and it sits behind me, and it's a lion that's sitting on a sofa on a couch in a living room, and it's kind of how I picture myself. I think I feel like I'm a leader, but I'm also casual. I also can hang out in a living room and just be normal, and yet at the same time, I also feel a little bit out of place, just because I know my background of where I came from. I know how I navigate the world. That sometimes it's against the grain and it feels a little out of place, but I'm comfortable with that. And so I think that picture is what it's why it hangs in my office, and it reminds me of all those things.
You mentioned a statistic last time we talked about how few people play professional football. If that number that probably you could share us is small, there are only three couples in the history of the game that we have a father and a son winning the Super Bowl. That is an amazing achievement. So why don't we start right there? What it takes to
Oh,
be an elite athlete?
yes, a very small number of men in the history of mankind have ever played in the NFL. If you think about it, there's 8 billion people on the planet now. Only 25,000 men have ever played in the NFL, roughly 25,000. Out of that 25,000 men, only half have ever played longer than 3 years. Right? So a very small percentage of men have played longer than 3 years in the NFL. And then to your point, I grew up having a father that played in the NFL for 14 years, won 4 Super Bowls, is in the Hall of Fame, and arguably one of the best NFL players of all time. And growing up in that household, I quickly realized that there was a certain standard that you had to do things. There was a certain mindset in which you had to approach your day, and my father had very high standards, and he wanted the very best for himself, and he wanted others to have the very best for themselves, and so he would demand that of my brother and my sisters. He would demand that of the people from around him. But interesting enough, one of the things that you learn, I got a chance to learn as well, was my dad's just also a man. Despite being this world class athlete and a really great player, I also saw that he was human. A lot of people thought he was not human, that he was superhuman. Um, but because I saw him in his humanness, it made me realize that I too could do that. It made me realize that I too could have that dream, and that I too am capable of doing what my father is doing. And I think that's such an important lesson for all of us. Sometimes it's hard for us to dream or believe or think big because we don't see ourselves in the people that are doing those things. It's hard for us to relate or connect, um, and and so we sometimes maybe underestimate the superpowers that we have inside of us, and we maybe don't push or dream big enough. But nevertheless, because I was able to see it, I also got to see that there's also, you just because you believe it, and just because you can see it, and just because you want it, doesn't mean that it's going to happen. What I got to see as well is all the work that it takes. I'm always a believer in this kind of mentality, and this, you know, words that I've said in the past, that success leaves clues. At any point in life, if we really want to understand what it takes to be successful, well, let's start to look at people that are successful in any area and start to be detectives and try to figure out what are the clues that they're leaving us, what are the clues that they're giving us, so that we can apply them to our lives. And so that's a long-winded way of answering your question, Fernando, but it's a way of saying that I was very lucky at a young age to have a father that was a role model, that not only showed me that it was possible, but also showed me the work that was needed to make it possible. And then it was up to me to figure out how to go and do that. I think one of the other things that I quickly learned was, a lot of people have goals, and a lot of people have desires, but very few people understand suffering. And what I mean by that is we could ask the three of us, what are your goals? What are your desires? What do you really want? And we all might have an answer. But if I said, well, now describe, what are you willing to, how much suffering are you willing to endure? How much pain can you handle? That might be a harder thing for us to answer. And what's interesting is so many people can identify their goals and their dreams, but oftentimes don't understand the sacrifice that's needed to obtain that. And when they start to go down that path and they realize how much pain and suffering is needed to go after that, they maybe shift courses or go in a different direction, and that's okay. But I think sometimes there's a mismatch in what one's willing to do. And I like to say, you have to do what you don't want to do to be what you want to be. You want to be a great athlete. You want to be a great investor. You want to be a great leader. You want to be a great husband. You want to be a great wife. You want to be a great doctor. You're going to have to do the things you don't want to do. You're going to have to stay up late. You're going to have to put in overtime. You have to do extra reps. You're going to have to read more, study more. And that's the only way. I mean, that's the only way that I know. There might be other ways, but that's the only way that I know. And to me is kind of helped me navigate the world to get the opportunity and the privilege to play in the NFL.
Discipline, long-term compromise, and hard work is a common thing in becoming a good athlete and a good investor. But you mentioned that you will have to suffer, and how to stay in the game in the bad cycles, in the suffering. How do you do that? Because you have to do the work. You have to go to the gym, but our mind is weak a lot of times.
Yes. And the world is so tempting. There's so many other things that we could do instead of sitting in the suffering or going through the bad times. And it's such a really good question and an observation, because just because you're suffering doesn't mean that you're going to win, or that it's going to change instantaneously. And the interesting part is, how long can you endure, right? That endurance is a big part of how long do you have the resilience to continue to weather the bad times, the difficult times? That's hard to say. And sometimes in investing, you can do everything right, and there are variables that could be out of your control that make that investment go bad. I just had a meeting earlier today. A gentleman went all in on an investment. They were doing very well, and the government here changed a rule, and that change of that rule made their investment basically go sideways, and they ended up losing all their money. They were doing everything right, but out of their control, the government made a decision that impacted that business. And because of that, he's now had to figure out how to sit in that suffering and that adversity and that challenge. And the harder part is how do you maintain your confidence? How do you maintain your strength, your energy, just like you did when it was going good? How do you attack the bad with that same type of enthusiasm? And that is, for every human, it's a little bit different. But I will say, it comes back to this mental mindset of mental toughness. And mentally tough people have the ability to do the harder things in life. And it's not a comparison, and you shouldn't feel bad if you don't have that, but it's just an observation that I've seen over the years, that you can be physically talented, you can be intellectually talented, but if you're not mentally tough, it's hard to endure what it takes to be good over a long period of time. And more importantly, to your question, how to endure adversity and endure the pain, even if you didn't choose it, right? That somebody else has inflicted. Takes a tremendous amount of inner strength and mental toughness.
Do you think that toughness comes from the standards, or your mental toughness? I mean, the standards that you got as a child or growing up, or do you think it could be worked on some level?
Yeah,
How to improve?
another good question. Like, where does it come from? How does one develop that? And I think about for myself, it comes from me. I feel like I have a responsibility. There are a lot of men and women that came before me in this world that made a lot of sacrifices to allow me to sit in the seat that I'm in, to allow me to have the clothes that I have, to allow me to breathe the air that I breathe, that made sacrifices so that I could have the opportunities that are in front of me. So I feel like I have a responsibility to endure whatever is thrown at me because of the sacrifices of the people that came before me made to allow me to be here. I think the other thing that's a driver for me is my faith. I feel like I'm a believer in God. I'm a believer that He has conspired on our behalf to put us in a position to be where we are. And it's my duty, it's my responsibility to honor Him and to honor the blessings that He has bestowed upon me, to be a good steward. And so, and then I'm competitive. I don't like to lose. I'll tell you guys a story. So when I was a junior in high school, and this is the 11th grade here, and I'm 16 years old, 17, actually, yeah, 16 years old. It's the summertime here, and we were going to go to the beach. We're going to La Playa. We're going to go hang out at the beach and with a group of friends. And so 4 of us got in a car, and I'm driving the car, and we're headed to the beach. And we're driving on the freeway and the big highways here in the States. And we had to stop to get off gas to go get petrol, and we're going to get gas, and we get back on the highway. Well, when we're getting back on the highway, I lost control of the car. And when I lost control of the car, I ended up taking the car and going sideways across the freeway. And all of a sudden, boom, a car went right through the driver's side door and bent the car in half. Now, my girlfriend at the time that was sitting next to me broke her shoulder and her neck, but she was survived. My best friend at the time didn't have a seatbelt on, was ejected out of the car, but it was a convertible. And because it was a convertible, he grabbed on to the trunk of the car somehow and hung on, and that nothing happened to him. The friend of mine who was sitting behind me broke every bone from his waist down in his left leg. His entire left leg got crushed. And then my entire face, from my eyebrows down to the top of my lip, was crushed. And I was not awake. My friends thought I was dead. The ambulance came. They took me to the hospital, and I was not dead, thankfully. And they took me and they did reconstructive surgery. They cut me from ear to ear across the top of my head and then peeled down my skin in my front of my face, and did reconstructive surgery all through my face. And I had 2 blood clots in my brain. I was in bad shape. I was not doing very well. But of course, when the doctor finally came in and I could talk, the doctor said, how are you doing? And I said, can I play football? The first question. My mom, can I play football? The doctor said, play football, son. You're lucky to be alive. You're just going to be thankful that you're alive. Your eye was detached. We had to reattach your eye. We had to put metal plates through your nose and orbits of your eye sockets. You're lucky that you have your brain still intact. Well, that wasn't what I wanted to hear. That wasn't the question. That wasn't the answer to the question. But he didn't say no. And so in my belief, I thought I could get back. And so I was in the hospital for 17 days. And then I finally was out of the hospital. The first day that I got home, I walked for about 10 minutes around the neighborhood. And when I got back to the house, I collapsed. I was so exhausted. That's all I had. I couldn't go anymore. I was just exhausted. So the next day I woke up and I walked 11 minutes and collapsed. The next day I walked 15. And the next day I walked 20. And then I finally said, hey, Mom, I want to go to football. I just want to watch it. I just need to be around it. I promise I won't play. I just need to be around the team. So I went and watched one day. And the next day I went and just, had the ball in my hand and playing catch. And the next day, let me just put the pads on for a little bit. And the next day, and then I found a way back on the football field. And I tell you that story because I realized that I had lost everything. I was captain of every sports team. I was the top of my class. I was homecoming king. There wasn't anything that I didn't do that I wasn't the best at. And instantly, it was all taken from me. And I knew that when I had lost everything, I actually found the most important thing, and that was my faith. And because of my faith and because of my belief in God, I realized that I could move forward and withstand and be resilient with anything that was thrown my way. Now, that doesn't mean my life has always been easy. Still, there's been a lot of hard things, and I've been a knucklehead and made a lot of mistakes. But I've continued to believe and trust in myself and continued to find ways to push forward.
And you look good, my man.
Thanks.
And
the surgeon did a good job.
and what habits supported you the most at the time?
In a world where there's always a lot of things going on now, and there's never a dull moment, what habit supported me the most was the power of stillness. And what I learned, the habit, and I tell people this a lot, is how much strength we have in each breath. Like if we just, take a breath, your whole body, you lift up, you feel strong, you sit up like a lion. And it's amazing, that breath and that strength that we have. And we've been there where, you're angry, you're frustrated, or your world's coming at us, but man, just to take a breath and breathe. It is, there's so much in that stillness.
You were, as you said already, going the way of to be a great athlete. And then you have this accident that takes away everything, could have taken everything away from you at probably a very young age. Do you think that lesson was important in achieving, because being the best guy at school or the best athlete at school is not the same as winning a Super Bowl. Now you knew the hard way that you can lose everything at any moment of time, and probably that's not only gives you resilience, but probably change something in your mind, even though you have your father role model. Or
Yes, it did. It taught me three things that I still think about today. One, gratitude, right? Being grateful, not taking for granted. I probably took a lot of things for granted before that time. So an appreciation, and not an appreciation for the success of things, but the journey, the process of things, the life, like just life, just being grateful to breathe. So that's one. Two, it taught me that I it's interesting, even from playing in the Super Bowl and in the NFL, and now as an investor, I take a lot of risk, and taking risk is an important part of being successful. And you have to be contrarian, and you have to do things that other people aren't willing to do. And so, because of that experience, even though you would think that it would make me hesitant because it was an accident and I was being risky, it actually gave me a confidence that I was able to survive that, and I could, missing a tackle, or maybe not making the right investment. I've experienced much worse outcomes, and so it made me more confident in the ability to take risk. So that was the second thing, and then the third was, and this is critical. This is, whether it was the doctors in my family, whether it's the players on the NFL team that we won a Super Bowl, and that the other men that were in the huddle and Hall of Famers, or it's the team now that I have as investors. Everything that I've done to move forward or achieve a goal has been done with others. I haven't done it on my own. And so having the ability to have the discernment on who to work with and who to trust and who to help you move forward has been really important. And so those are some of the lessons that I learned. And I think about it when we're looking at companies or meeting with people. I might be a talented CEO, but if I don't see other people around them that are as talented or can be complementary, I get a little nervous, because you need an entire team or core group of team to move forward, and at least in my mind. And so those are some of the things that I learned.
That's super interesting. And it makes sense with taking risks and your investment trajectory of going into venture capital. We also wanted to ask about that team building philosophy, but I would love to know, for you coming into the investment world as an outsider, what do you think has been your differentiator? How do you see things differently from where you come from? And also, if you can talk about that team mentality, is also super interesting.
I am an outsider for sure. Many of my peers in the industry they went to the Ivy League schools, and they worked at the top tech companies or the top investment banks, and they are brilliant, and they are very smart and have very high IQs. And that's how they win. I will say two things that I think have helped me is I feel like I have a very good EQ, maybe because of the experiences that I've had in my life that give me the ability to have the understanding and the empathy on how to connect with humans and relate to them. And that's helped me in my investment, because you can have a very high IQ, but if you don't understand the humanness and the human component of investing, you can miss out, right? It's both art and science. So that's those are things that I think that have helped me. The other thing that I think has helped me is because I've played in the NFL. I mean, I'm in the NFL with the best. I had 4 men on my defense that I played with that are in the Hall of Fame. Also, very, very rare. Very, very rare. And so what that did was it gave me the ability again to see what greatness looked like, to see this rare air of how they talked and how they practiced and how they motivated themselves and what they demanded of themselves and others, similar to what my father taught me. And that ability to be around that helped me with my taste buds, and so, or my senses. And when I'm around other men and women that have those characteristics, or I see that magic in them, it makes me pay attention. And not everybody's been in an arena to develop that awareness of what greatness looks like.
It's really interesting that you have come up a couple of times, or maybe 3 times already, the advantageous position that you had to be observed, the part that we regular mortals, we never observe about elite persons or successful person in any endeavor, which is we always see the highlights, playing the guys playing the Super Bowl in your case, but we never see the trajectory of those men. You have many role models because you either were the son of one, you play with some, and it's very interesting that you mentioned that give you like a special feeling to see where those traits are, even though probably you don't necessarily see the other part of success.
Yeah, I mean, being around, these individuals, whether in sports, in business, or luckily even having a father in my household that have had those traits that have helped me understand what it takes to achieve your goals has been invaluable. And even now, as an investor, I often spend a lot of time with other top investors, talking to them about their best practices, their strategies, trying to understand how they're finding ways to win, what gives them an edge. I'll give you guys an example. One of the things that we talk a lot about right now as a firm is AI, right? You guys might have heard of this magical thing called AI. It's pretty cool. It might as well be the internet, right? It's in everything. And it's very important. And it's going to change the world in a very powerful and meaningful way. I do believe that. But I also, as a firm, one of the things that we think is also equally as important is another form of AI. And that form of AI stands for authentic interaction. And the more authentic interactions you have with high caliber people, with other men and women that are successful, and those interactions and conversations and the content and knowledge and information that you get from each other is invaluable, and that's what gives you edge. And so, in a world where information is going to get commoditized in a lot of ways, your ability to get proprietary intel will be very important. It will be very important for us as a firm. And so that's a little bit of our secret sauce that I just revealed to you guys.
One of the things that since I know your firm first and know you later, but I know that you are inspiring everyone in your team, or inspiration for everyone in your team. But that strikes me very strongly is the way you relate with people, the way you cultivate your network, the way that you try that everyone in the network helps each other and you promote that. It has always surprised me. Unfortunately, I haven't been there in person, but I've seen many of your conferences online from end to end, and not only for the people that you invite, but the way you promote that they relate and they engage with another. It seems to me that's beyond your team. That is an integral part of how you see your role. Probably since you were the football team and now mostly as an investor. But can you elaborate about the importance that you give You give yourself to network in the real good thing that people collaborate to make everyone better.
We happy to talk about that, and it is really important to who we are as a firm. It's very important to the DNA of what makes us go is this idea of, we call it engineering serendipity. If we can find ways to create environments that we can aggregate world-class people together, we believe good things will happen. And it may not happen for us, but they will happen for those other people, and that's a win. And it's a philosophy that I live by that I think really, it helps to be a motivator and a driver for us. Is a giving hand is never empty. And the more that we give, and the more that we share, and the more that we invest into others and into the ecosystem, the more that comes back to us. And it's very hard to do, especially when you're getting started, when you don't have a lot of resources, or you're younger, and people think, well, I don't, what can I share? And it's amazing how much we can all share with one another. And I do really believe that that's a part of our DNA, is this idea of supporting and giving to our ecosystem and building world-class networks and community. And again, it comes back to this authentic interaction and this other form of AI. If we can continue to cultivate relationships with a vast network of world-class individuals and people who are doing things on a high level and find ways to bring value to them, hopefully that'll help us in our investment decisions. Hopefully that'll help us when we are trying to get into companies. Hopefully that will, allow us to continue to achieve our goals. And so there's some selfishness that's rooted in it, and there's definitely some orchestration on our end, but it really is to do well, and we know good things happen when we operate with that type of mindset.
I like the concept of talent density that Reed Hastings uses for Netflix. Like, it doesn't matter how many people you have, it's the talent divided by the amount of people. But I like how you're talking about caring, maybe about, like, I don't know, caring density, how much caring divided by people. What have you seen on high-performing teams? Is it caring more important than talent? Is it that they must have both? What have you seen on practice in the real world?
High-performing teams communicate efficiently, effectively, and simply. There's a shared desire to succeed. There's a shared vision of the goals. There's a willingness to go above and beyond. There's accountability. There's an environment where yesterday's best isn't good enough for today. And this idea that you've got to keep pushing forward. And I like to tell my team, there is no perfect, but there's always better. I've seen that in high performing teams, is just relentless pursuit to the advancement of the goal, to not be just good, or not to just do your job, but to be great. I actually like to say that, one of the things that we're trying to do with our firm and the people that we want to be around is, you want to be around common men and women that have an uncommon desire to succeed. And you see that magic on really high performing teams, is there are just people that, they're just machines, and to a certain extent, and they work tirelessly to help their goals, and they help one another. If I'm tired, and I see Fernando tired, and I'm not going to let him know. I'm going to pick him up, even though I might be run down. I'm going to help him. I can pick him up, or encourage him, or maybe take something off his plate. There's this shared shared effort together. and strengthen numbers and to a certain extent. So all of those are things or characteristics that I've found in high performing teams and high performing companies.
One question that probably a lot of our audience that probably would be wondering if they, when they reach this point of the conversation, is why you transition from sports to venture capital. Probably if there are only 3 couples winning the Super Bowl, probably you are the only one from the NFL to Silicon Valley, right?
It's a really good question. And when I first met my wife, before she became my wife, my wife's name is Willa Ford. She was a famous pop singer, and she met me, and I was no longer a football player. And she said, "Well, wait, what do you do right now?" She said, "I thought you played football. I don't understand how you got into the world of finance." And so even my wife didn't really understand that journey. And so when I was done playing, I actually went to a family office and started working in a family office for a few years. And as I was there, enjoying that experience, really learning and trying to understand what life was like outside of playing in the NFL, I had the opportunity to go and become a co-founder of a company. And my co-founder and I decided to go and build a startup. And we built that company for 4.5 years. And then we were acquired by Fox Sports, a media company out here. And so that's really what brought me back into the world of tech and gave me the experience to understand, somewhat of the journey of what a founder goes through. And it was very frustrating to see friends and people that I knew had earned, a lot of money wasting it in poor investments. And I knew if we could create a vehicle and a firm that would give them access to the best venture funds and hopefully maybe the best companies, that could be really special and rewarding. And so that's when I decided to launch the firm that we have now and build it out. It was really, how do we give our investors the ability to have a seat at the table, to invest, to learn, to engage, and connect with the people in the world of venture capital.
Which one was the typical error of your friends in order to waste their money?
Oh gosh, so many. It was, most of it was probably 3 things. One, they didn't understand that there were other companies that were attempting to do what that company was already trying to do. They lacked the ability to really do the diligence needed to know, is this company and the people in this company a viable business? And then 3, I think they probably bit off more than they could chew, and they took too much risk. And so, startups, so you're going to lose. This is a very risky game. You lose a lot of money, and people probably took too much risk, I would say, in some of the investments. Instead of maybe spreading out and diversifying, they took too much risk in 1 or 2 companies.
You said, I have to correct this. I see these people making these mistakes, these errors, and I have to do something to help probably me building a business, but also helping them. And then you go about, I remember a sentence or a phrase that someone told me, if you want to go to Silicon Valley, don't bring money. All these guys can get money from everywhere. Bring something that they value. Because then they will open the door and all that, because they can raise more money in like a block here in US in any major city than all the money that you can bring from Chile. Probably one of the first challenges that you had when you were moving from the NFL and back onto finance and Silicon Valley for say, well, I might have money, I have some friends with money, but I need to give you something else, which is the community that will probably makes everything possible, and this authentic interaction that we can help on both sides. And the second, just to ask a question which is not exactly related to that, but also in the same sense, I know that you do those camps to probably sports people, to not only to come and learn about investing, but also to bridge both worlds of probably in order to show them or illustrate some of the path that you have gone through your career.
Yeah, there's a fellowship program that we created a number of years ago where we allow athletes to come in and spend 2 weeks learning about venture capital, learning about the fundamentals of venture. And it's a really special program that helps them have context, get insights, and understand who the men and women are that do this really well, why it's very hard to do it very well, and equips them hopefully to give them some context when they're gone through that program. Now when they see investment opportunities, they're better equipped to make better decisions moving forward. At the same time, it also gives the GPs and the founders that speak at the fellowship and participate in that and help support that program the ability to interact with the athlete and learn from the athlete and talk to the athlete about what did it take to be great? What did you do when you were trying to, come back from that injury, and how did you handle adversity? And so it is mutually beneficial. And so that's something that's been really an amazing thing, is both a founder and an athlete, I think, are the same people. And what I mean by that is a young founder is going to go raise money, and he's going to go around and people are like, that's crazy. That's never going to work. That's not going to happen. Don't leave your day job. A young athlete, he's going to tell people, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a pro athlete. Stay in school. It's never going to happen. It's not a good idea. And yet both individuals found a way to make the impossible possible. And they worked and they navigated and they put in the energy and effort that was needed to get to the highest levels. And so to me, they're very, very similar in wiring, clearly doing two different sports and speaking a different language, but nevertheless are more alike than they are different. And that's why we have so many athletes and founders that get along with one another and are connected in our network.
Ryan, we really appreciate your time. We started as a podcast, but we're slowly transitioning into a community. And I think one of our values is this relentless pursuit of improving. So I think that's a very common thing we share. But before we go, is there a last message that you want to give to our community? Maybe a book they should read, maybe a mentor that we should study, whatever that you think would help us in this eternal pursuit?
There's a great book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. That's a really fantastic book that I think is one that I like to share. There's another book called The Art of Learning, which is just the idea about growth mindset and constantly finding how do we keep growing in our ability to learn. We understand that as a child, but as we get to an adult, that becomes much harder. And then please, if you make your way to San Francisco or Palo Alto in the Bay Area, look us up, Next Legacy. Come by our office and say hello. Just really grateful that I could be with you, and thankful for Fernando for inviting me to be a part of this podcast. And the fact that you're taking this content and have this to share with your audience is really powerful. And so I'm excited that I could be a part of it, and definitely look forward to meeting you all in person at some point.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Ryan.
Well,
Pablito will go for sure.
I will go. Yeah. I have friends in San Francisco, so I will be there. I'll take that invitation.
Come on out.